Parts 1 and 2 documented what the disclosure movement looks like from above: the institutional track, the commercial track, both producing the same output. The alien frame stays in place. The human explanation stays outside it. Part 3 answers the question that makes the whole architecture make sense. Why 2017? The cover story ran for 70 years without a public drip. Why open the valve now? The answer has nothing to do with the truth getting out. It has everything to do with what the apparatus needed. From 1969 to 2017, nearly 5 decades, the official position of the United States government was, "There's nothing to investigate." Project Blue Book closed. The Condon Report concluded no national security threat. UFOs became the domain of enthusiasts and tabloids and late-night radio. The silence served the apparatus. Classified programs ran. The contractor class consolidated. The technology gap between what existed in classified programs and what the public knew about continued to widen. The silence was working. So something changed. Not the technology, not the evidence, not a crisis of institutional conscience. What changed was the strategic calculation. 3 factors converged around 2017. First, the technology gap had closed enough at the edges to make controlled disclosure manageable. The public already knew about stealth aircraft, already knew about drones, already knew about classified programs that produced aircraft indistinguishable from science fiction a generation earlier. The gap between what was classified and what was publicly acknowledged had narrowed enough that partial disclosure, confirming phenomena exist without confirming what they are, could be executed without giving up the underlying programs. You can confirm the pilot saw something without confirming what it is. You can confirm recovery of craft without confirming whose craft. The architecture of the release was designed to thread that needle. Second, a new strategic competitor needed a new strategic narrative. The post-Cold War UFO story had been built around Soviet uncertainty, unknown technology, potential adversary capability. The alien frame was useful in part because it masked real adversary programs from real adversary intelligence services. By 2017, China had demonstrated hypersonic glide vehicles, advanced drone capabilities, undersea capabilities, space-based assets that matched or exceeded American equivalents in specific domains. The classified programs needed a new container. Not ours, the phrase that became the default answer at every UAP hearing, does double work. It tells the public this may be extraterrestrial. It tells the adversary intelligence services this may be Chinese or Russian or Iranian. The alien frame doesn't just protect classified American programs from public accountability. It protects them from adversary credit. You can fly anything over a test range if the witnesses describe it as anomalous, and if the official response is, "We don't know what it was." The adversary's intelligence services are no closer to knowing either. Third, the disclosure apparatus needed to get ahead of genuine leaks. Congressional interest in UAP had been building since at least 2020. Senators and representatives with access to classified briefings were asking questions the executive branch wasn't answering. A genuine uncontrolled leak, documentary evidence, physical samples, witness testimony outside the managed pipeline would be categorically different from a controlled release. A controlled release lets the apparatus choose the container, chooses which witnesses get platforms, chooses which footage gets cleared, chooses which phrases enter the congressional record. Grush's non-human biologics entered the record because someone decided it could. What didn't enter the record, the specific programs, the specific contractors, the specific research lineage this series has documented is still inside the container. The drip is not disclosure. It's the pressure management. The valve opens just enough to prevent the pipe from bursting. The UAP Disclosure Act passed in modified form in 2024. It established a review board. It set timelines for declassification. It created an official mechanism for the release of UAP-related government records. The disclosure movement celebrated this as a victory. It's more accurately described as an institutionalization. The apparatus now has a formal legal framework for managing what gets released, and when, and in what form. The uncontrolled leak scenario becomes less likely the more the release mechanism is formalized. What the Disclosure Act accomplishes is not transparency. It's the construction of a controlled transparency pipeline. The government will release what the government decides to release, on the government's timeline, in the government's framing. That is not disclosure. That's the cover story's final institutional upgrade. And then there's the announcement of the announcement. The pattern runs on a predictable cycle. A congressional committee member or a newly formed task force signals to the press that a significant disclosure is coming. Scheduling, media coordination, the suggestion that something new is about to enter the public record. The cameras show up. The microphones get stacked. The members take the podium. No new information. The restatement of what was already in the record. A call for further investigation. A commitment to transparency. The member's name in the headline. The member's face on the screen. The member's profile elevated among a constituency that cares deeply about this issue and represents a motivated, engaged voter base. Anna Paulina Luna, her cohort on the task force on the declassification of federal secrets. Some of them may genuinely believe they are pushing for accountability. That belief does not change what the performance produces. The announcement of the announcement, with no announcement to follow, is not a failure of the disclosure process. It is the disclosure process working exactly as designed. It generates the appearance of pressure without producing the substance of it. It gives the institutional apparatus something to respond to without requiring it to respond with anything real. And it gives the congressional member something no amount of door knocking delivers for free. Camera time, earned media, name recognition among an audience that shows up. The disclosure movement built the audience. The political class is harvesting it. This is not conspiracy. It does not require coordination between the intelligence apparatus and the members running the press conferences. It does not require Luna or anyone else to be consciously running cover. The system produces the theater because the theater is useful. The members participate because the theater is useful to them. The apparatus benefits because the theater consumes the attention and energy of the people most likely to ask questions the apparatus cannot answer. Everyone is doing exactly what their incentives point them toward. And the questions that would require real answers stay outside the frame. Here's the arc of the cover story across 8 decades. 1947 to 1969. Deny, dismiss, ridicule. The silence works because the public has no access to military airspace and no mechanism to verify what the pilots are seeing. 1969 to 2017. Ignore, close the official investigation, let the topic become culturally associated with fringe belief. The silence still works because the gap between classified and public is too wide to bridge. 2017 to present. Confirm the phenomena. Dispute the origin. Establish a formal release mechanism. Let the congressional record fill with not ours testimony. Build the legal architecture for controlled transparency. Each phrase serves the same function. Keep the human explanation outside the frame of serious consideration. The method changes. The function doesn't. The cover story doesn't end with disclosure. The cover story upgrades to accommodate disclosure. And the final upgrade? The most elegant operation of all is convincing the people who have spent their lives trying to break the cover story to celebrate the apparatus that is managing its conclusion. The disclosure movement wanted the truth out. What they got was the apparatus deciding what truth to release and when, and in a container designed to produce a specific conclusion. Not human, not ours, not accountable. Part 4 is the close. This is where I step out of the documented record and tell you what I think, not as inference, not as sourced argument, as the conclusion I've arrived at after following this thread from Nuremberg to a DOJ addendum to a congressional hearing room. The truth they hid wasn't alien. It was human. Part 4 is about what that actually means. Full episodes of the Echoes of Disclosure series are on Substack and First Light Archive. The truth they hid wasn't alien. It was human. It was always human.